There's a debate that's been going on in Washington for decades, and the focus is Social Security. There was talk years ago about doing away with all or part of the program and having employees find their own retirement instruments. At other times, some members of Congress wanted to cut benefits. Still others wanted an increase in benefits, funding it by removing the cap on contributions or by having employers and employees contribute a bit more. During all of the talk about what to do with the program has been the warning that it would eventually go into the red. But is Social Security really in trouble? Will there be more retirees receiving benefits than workers to contribute? And if so, what can be done to keep the program solvent and perhaps even expand it a bit? We asked Eric Kingson these questions. Kingson is a professor of social work at Syracuse University in New York and co-author with Nancy Altman of the book Social Security Works: Why Social Security Isn't Going Broke and How Expanding It Will Help Us All. He's also the founding co-director of the organization Social Security Works. So, is the program in deep trouble, as we've heard?
The horror stories are essentially wrong, absolutely 100% wrong. We built Social Security to provide secure retirement, this protection if you're disabled or if you die and leave young children. It's done a magnificent job. No one had to worry about receiving their benefits during the near collapse of our economy a few years ago, and no one has to worry about it in the future unless the American people decide they don't want it. It cannot go broke. It's just that simple. It has an ongoing stream of revenue based on contributions by working Americans. As long as Americans work, there's an ongoing stream coming in.
There is a greater number of baby boomers retiring in the next 10 years, so doesn't that affect the contributions? Won't Social Security begin to lose money?
Of course, like all systems, it needs to be adjusted. There is an adjustment needed going into the future, and in fact, we think there's even more that's needed. Not only can we address a modest, short-term, long-term financing problem, but we also can afford to expand this benefit, the system. We're a very rich nation. It's a very conservatively financed system, and as part of that conservative system approach, it's the only system other than Medicare that we project costs out 75 years. We don't project the costs of the Department of Defense or transportation. Imagine if we projected the Defense Department's expenditures out 75 years. We'd have a huge deficit. In the case of Social Security, we projected out 75 years. The best estimates show that it can meet all of its obligations through 2033, and then it has 75 cents coming in for every dollar the American people have earned. That's a problem, but it's not a catastrophe at all.
One of the ways that Kingson says we could fund it and even expand it is to scrap the cap.
One thing that could be done that would address almost all of that is to ask every American to make the same payroll contributions, pay the same payroll contribution rate on all their earnings. Ask all Americans to do that. Today, 94% of Americans pay a payroll contribution on all their earnings. 6% escape that. Those who have earnings above $118,500 pay nothing beyond $118,500. If we asked all Americans to make contributions on all their earnings, that would address well over 3/4 of the projected shortfall.
So there are millionaires and billionaires who only pay Social Security on a small fraction of their earnings. Kingson says that another part of the problem is that when workers pay their 6.2% of wages into the system, the employer has to match it. And that's a big sticking point for business if they have to pay out on millions of dollars.
There's a real disregard for the American people, I think. We see people talking about tightening your financial belts. And we hear that from their bunch of corporate CEOs who've gotten together in something called Fix the Debt. Mr. Code from Honeywell, one of the chief among them. Now, this man is sitting on about a $70 million retirement fund of his own. Actually, I think it's more than that. But he's running around saying Americans have to tighten their belt. What we have is a shell game, and we have a society in which we've pulled resources, pulled opportunities from the middle class and from lower income people, and we've seen them shift to the higher income. And rather than trying to adjust to some of these problems, they're turning around and blaming everyone else. The reason baby boomers or the Generation X and Yers don't have enough retirement income security, they're not saving enough. So they have to save more. Well, that's easy to say, but when your salaries haven't gone up for 30 years on average, there's something else going on there, especially when the salaries of the top 1% and the top 0.1% have been soaring.
Kingston says that Social Security is a program that middle-class Americans of all political persuasions like and rely upon. As he said, it's difficult for most working people to save enough because real wages haven't kept up with the cost of living. Social Security provides that small, yet vital, safety net, but in its present form doesn't promise a very rosy picture for families and retirees.
Today's older population is not living high on the hog. Many, many older people, more than a majority, are either at very limited economic circumstances or just a shock away, the loss of a spouse, an illness away from very significant financial problems. That's a huge problem. Second problem, 2/3 of working Americans will not be able to maintain their standard of living in retirement going forward. That's people under age 66 today. That's a crisis. The real crisis we have in the retirement area is a retirement income crisis for the American people.
Kingston says we need to expand the system to provide more benefits to retirees, the disabled, and survivors of those who paid into the program. He also advocates benefits for those who are not in those categories.
We talk an awful lot about caring for the family, and we certainly applaud the many people who give care to others, to children, to ill family members. But we are a nation, we are the only industrial nation that doesn't have paid family leave at a federal level at the birth of a child, at serious illness. We allow people to leave work for 12 weeks, but if you can't afford to leave work, that's not family leave. We can afford this, and that's a core response we should have to our very significant pressures on our families.
Kingston says that one of the reasons it's so difficult for working people and retirees to keep their heads above water is the huge gap in wages between CEOs and other executives and the average working American.
We are seeing today corporate executives where in 1960s they received 27 times the earnings of their average employee. Today they're receiving almost 300 times in the major Fortune 500. There's a huge expansion of wealth. We've seen 2/3 of the income growth from 1949 to 1979. 2/3 of the income growth went to the bottom 20%. Since then, none of the income growth has gone to the bottom 20%, 90%. It's all gone to the top 10%. In other words, everyone else on average has lost. In fact, they've actually lost about 15%. So what we have here is an inequality crisis that undermines the Social Security system. There's less money coming in. It undermines people's retirement income security because they're making less money. They're less able to save, but they're also paying less money into Social Security than they would have otherwise, and that means they have lower benefits coming.
Kingston says we expanded Social Security in years when we as a country were less well off than we are today. He says a modest expansion is doable if we scrap the cap and introduce small increases in contributions.
If we ask Americans to pay a little bit extra, 50 cents more a week over 20 years, meaning in year one, out of your paycheck, there's an extra 50 cents that goes out each week. In year two, $1. If you do that slowly over 20 years, you increase Social Security contributions by a very significant amount that allows you to expand benefits. It allows you to do some things like provide family leave, like increase monthly benefits by roughly 10%, perhaps limiting it to $150. It allows you to have a cost of living adjustment mechanism that actually reflects the inflation impact on people with disabilities and older people.
One of the benefits of having a national program like Social Security is that it's a very cost-effective system to run, especially when you compare it to other financial instruments such as 401ks and annuities.
A little less than a penny is spent on administration, less than 1%. No pension system even begins to come close to that. No private pension system can do that. And there are a lot of folks who have an interest in pulling this apart. And then I think you also have a lot of lemmings, people who've heard the story and the drumbeat over and over again. We can't afford this system. We have to tighten our belts. I think it's a distraction. It's a distraction from the reality that Americans work harder than just about any other people in the world. We have had very modest wage adjustments in the past 30 years, if we've had them at all. And the problems have much more to do with how we're distributing the fruits of our work, not the lack of Americans' savings or the inability of our society to pay for a modest Social Security system.
You can read more about why Social Security is important, as well as ideas on how to maintain and expand the program in Eric Kingson's and Nancy Altman's book, Social Security Works. It's available now in stores and online. Kingson invites listeners on both sides of the issue to visit their website at socialsecurityworks.org. For more information about all of our guests, you can log on to our site at viewpointsonline.net. You can also find archives of past programs there and on iTunes and Stitcher. I'm Gary Price.
Living with a chronic condition like multiple sclerosis can be overwhelming without support. That's why Biogen recently launched MS Blueprint, a unique online tool to encourage people impacted by MS to focus on activities that may bring joy to their lives every day. The program was inspired by happiness expert and best-selling author Gretchen Rubin.
Like my happiness project, MS Blueprint helps you seek the most out of each day and not let MS define you. By visiting msblueprint.com, you can set goals and create personalized activity plans tailored to your interests that may help you attain a more positive life. When you feel every day reflects how you want your life to be, that's when you're truly happiest.
By visiting the website, you can check out new blog posts and fun and inspiring activities suggested by the MS community. Whatever goals or interests you have, whether it's to reduce stress or make more time for loved ones, MS Blueprint can be customized for you. Visit msblueprint.com today.
Family vacations, cookouts, and hot temperatures can make it hard to stick to your everyday healthy routines throughout the summer. Busy mom and two-time soccer world champion Brandi Chastain teamed up with Dole Fruit Bowls to share her tips for eating healthy on the go all summer long.
I love to snack on fruit, but it's not always easy to bring with me on the go. That's why I love Dole Fruit Bowls. They bring the goodness of all natural fruit together with 100% juice for a delicious, fresh taste. Plus, I love to drink the juice at the end. And Dole Fruit Bowls are non-GMO, so I feel good about sharing them with my whole family. The individually sealed cups can easily be tossed into my gym bag or eaten on the sideline of any soccer game, making it simple to add more fruit to my diet, even on the busiest of summer days.
Dole Fruit Bowls are available at your local grocery store or supercenter in the canned fruit aisle. For more information, visit Dole.com. That's Dole.com.